so excited to speak with three lovely young ladies that have a podcast that will allow transparent conversations about faith, loss, recovery, domestic violence, incarceration, and more. These compelling women have decades of experience helping others move from trauma to power and self love. They share tools and insights from their personal and professional experience to guide those through the most challenging times of their life. Today we have Chappelle, Toby, and Rashida. Welcome to the show. This is so needed to have conversations to encourage others, not to judge, and to be able to speak freely that will allow closure and healing for so many. Toby, I want to begin with you. You lost your father to the COVID-19 virus. And I know this topic will help so many people, Toby, because you and your family were not able to go up to the hospital, to hug your dad, or to touch his hand. Is that going to be one of your topics of discussion? And will you share a little bit of that experience with the viewers?
Yes. We talk about grief, loss, a lot of our challenges and struggles on the podcast. And one of the things that I have consistently that's shown up for me since meeting the ladies, and I should say that the podcast was just one of the things that grew out of our original relationship, which was working with women who were experiencing domestic violence. And I speak a lot about my journey through grief that I'm still working through. Tomorrow makes 1 year since my dad died, and it feels like yesterday. And a lot of the trauma that's attached to losing someone, what feels like suddenly, and not being able to be there the whole time. He was in the hospital for 3 weeks. So we didn't get to see him the entire time he was in the hospital. And having someone call you and say that they held his hand as he died. And I still get choked up about that. And also part of the trauma, which connects with, I think, the work that we do, is the failings of the systems and institutions we rely on. And so my family had a really big issue with the lack of compassionate care we feel like my dad received, and or I should also say the families. Like, we understood a pandemic is happening, but I was really insistent on that there was a requirement for public health officials to figure out how to navigate these losses in a compassionate way, is that we can respect the need to mitigate spreading the virus, but how are you allowing people to die alone in hospitals? And our belief, my belief strongly, is that weeks on ventilators with no contact from families, you can't tell me that doesn't add to a sick person's demise or lack of ability to get better. And so, I talk about that in the podcast really extensively. The podcast, all of this was meant to help other people, but I always say that it helped me. I feel like I got something out of this so much, and I'm so appreciative to be in community with these ladies. The two ladies here and Khadijah Brown. I want to make sure we do an honorable mention of Khadijah Brown, who was a member of the group. And so, it just has been an amazing experience for me.
And that's good. And just like being in victim services, I have a mother who lost her 16-year-old child to gun violence. So I'm happy to be able to bring her on board, because then she can speak to those mothers and she can relate to those mothers. So when you're having a topic such as COVID-19 and being able to relate to those other family members that has lost a loved one to the virus and was not able to be there. I think that is so, so powerful. Chappelle, have you ever experienced or been in a domestic violence relationship? Because I did see that that's one of the topics that you guys will discuss. And if so, how did you get out of that relationship, and how were you able to break those mental chains? Sometimes when I have domestic violence workshops, there are people who say insensitive things because they've never been in that situation. Some people may say not me, or that will never happen to me. But there's times when we look up and we find ourselves in situations that are compromising. So Chappelle, can you touch a little bit on the domestic violence podcast?
Yeah, so we do mention domestic violence in the Change Mind podcast. I personally am a survivor of domestic violence. My daughter she will be 4, so it was August of 2017 when I first kind of felt some strength enough to carry on without my abuser. And so I'll say this. I was that young woman that said, I will be whoever they ever tried to touch me. And so when I first met this person, I was in love with them, but I allowed them to fulfill a void that I never knew I had. And so I placed a lot of me in their arms and I depended on them. And I didn't realize how much I was dependent on that person until they dropped me like a hot potato, right? And like they weren't feeling some of those feelings, those voids that I had, the need for, to keep them around or whatever. And so my family looked at me like I was crazy. My so-called friends looked at me like I was crazy when I was going back and forth, doing it back and forth. And it was honestly, I went through the 12 stages of grief, I was grieving, and I said 5 stages of grief, but it's also like recovering from something, right? When you go through those 12 steps in AA, which is why I said 12 steps, because I was addicted to him. And so it takes a lot, like sometimes you don't even know you're being abused when you're being abused. And you have to realize like through time. And so my advice is, and what I did for me to pull myself out was think back to what made me happy. And I took control over me, right? And so that means it was my mind. I had to go to therapy. I had to seek a spiritual life that was persistent, like in me. Like I had to persistently seek God. I'm a firm believer in Jesus Christ. I'm not encouraging anyone to, whatever you want to do, you do, whatever you believe in, that's fine. But I personally had to strengthen my bond with God and go to therapy and also shut the world out. I had to isolate to elevate. I had to spend some time alone. I had to be open to the advice from strangers and community organizations. I had to establish some goals, and short term and long term. When I was in the dark, the goal was, girl, you're going to wash up the ball. When I was dark. When the light started to peak, it was, what does your next 2 months look like? Create and establish some goals. It gave me something to look forward to. You feel hopeless when you're being abused. And when you leave your abuser, you feel hopeless. A lot of people who end up in domestic violence situations, their family was abusive. Mom was abusive, and they never realized it. And they gave them so much, they depended on those people so much that when they got into the real world, they allowed other things to fill those voids, whether it be a man, a woman, drugs, or whatever, shopping. We all find a way to fulfill our voids. And so once I realized what I was doing, and that I was giving so many people ownership of me and my love, I said, no, you need to look in the mirror and love yourself and give yourself some of that. And so that's how, and it took a while. It took me cussing people out, snapping on everybody, then realizing I was wrong, and then realizing I was hurt and had childhood trauma. And I had to do some cleaning up, some deep, deep soul searching. And it wasn't easy, and it was isolated. You know, I pursued my doctorate through those whole 4 years of me getting abused. Like literally started in the midst of me being abused, pregnant. I mean, I've coached my students with a black eye and they would never know, you know? And so, you know, it took me all of that to be here today to even have the strength to discuss it in front of my child.
Right, which is powerful, Chappelle. And you actually said something that I've never heard before when you just said you were addicted to him. That's powerful, but you will be able to help so many women and so many men, because men are in domestic violence relationships as well. So I thank you for being open to share that without shedding a tear, because it hurts when you have to, you reflect on these stories and then you think about some things that you've done that you probably would never share with anybody.
But and I feel free doing this. I feel so liberated right now.
I love you. You are awesome.
So are you.
Okay, so I did see that another conversation that you guys have on your podcast is speaking about incarceration. And Rashida, I'm going to tap on you for this, and that I think is so powerful. So I have a cousin who was locked up. He was incarcerated for murder. I have another cousin who was just locked up and under another alias and been in and out of jail all of his life. So not judging anybody, because I have family members who have been incarcerated. I actually had the pleasure of meeting some great young men at Greaterford, which is now Phoenix. And they have this program called Let's Circle Up. And the program is geared for these gentlemen to look through the lens of the victim. And it's great. And then speaking to these young men, in my mind, I'm saying, wow, these are awesome young men. But to the person that they probably victimized, they think of them in another way. So, Rashida, I know you have a story to share with incarceration, and I would love to hear your story.
Yes. First of all, I just like to say today was very emotional. Well, this week was very emotional today. I lost my mother to COVID a year. It's been a year.
Oh,
and
wow.
I just believe that a lot of my platforms was born, I gave birth like through pains for each platform that I have. I was the type of person, I'm a person that always beat the odds. When you say I'm down, I'm up. When you say I'm dead, I'm alive. They labeled me a chronic relapser with no hope of recovery because after almost 20 years of an active addiction, being arrested 27 times, God resurrected me. And when I say that, I'm literally saying that my faith is where it collided with destiny, and I just answered the call. After being locked up 27 times, I found myself on a corner crying out to God for help. That particular day, I didn't know what was going on or what was going to happen. I know I needed help, and I couldn't live like that any longer. Well, however, they always say be careful what you pray for. Because about a week later, I was in handcuffs and I knew that I was not getting out of jail. During that time, I made a decision in my mind that I was going to try something different. In order for me to try something different, I had to change. They say if nothing changes, nothing changes. So I wanted to learn everything there was about change in the prison system. I wanted to know who I was, because after 30 days of being incarcerated, I realized that when the lie that the devil was telling me was that I needed a chemical to survive. It was a lie. So when that lie was dispelled, I wanted to know who I was. So any kind of program they had in prison, I did it. I kind of was around people who I know was winning. I was reading books. I connected with my spirituality in prison. And I'm telling you, the people who would come there, I know like the power of influence to me was seeing people that I knew from the street that would come in and they would talk about this liberty they had. And I might have knew them from the street and I wanted it. I wanted to know, what could I do? If you're telling me that I can change, show me how to do it. My ears was open just to listen to anybody that would talk about change. And when I came home from prison, thank God I had my family. I had a family that embraced me. But after a while, I don't know whether they were ready for me to go as far as I did, because it was like some kind of like a dependence that they had in keeping me in that low place. But however, it was time for me to rise. And I had all kinds of stipulations on me. I had to do an outpatient program. See, a lot of times I listen to people and they want to go to another level real quick, but they don't understand that God is a God of order. There's some things that you have to go through and build a foundation before you can do anything. So when I came home, I had to do an outpatient program for 18 months. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. And it was like, I found myself in the dark, like, what's going on? But I had mentors. I connected with people who loved me, that was willing to tell me the truth to save my life. They was willing to tell me when I loved them, because I knew that they had my best interest at heart. If it wasn't for the women who loved me when I didn't love myself, I wouldn't be here today. If it wasn't for the people that God has sent my way to help me get through some obstacles that I thought the biggest thing in life was the fact that I was a drug addict. But I woke up out of a drug addiction with 5 kids. And all of them had their own resentments towards me. So I had to work through all this stuff, but I couldn't do it by myself. As a result of all these things, and me going to school, I remember one day, my spiritual mother said, Rashida, she said, go to school, go to college. Mind you, I got my GED in 1987 in prison. So when she told me to go to prison, when she told me to go to jail, I looked at her, I said, I thought she was trying to make a fool. People like me don't go to prisons, not people from the hood. I thought she was trying to insult my intelligence. But then again, because I know she loved me, I went and signed up. When I signed up, y'all, I didn't even know how to turn on a computer. But I was determined that I was not turning back. That if God said I can do it, then I'm going to do it. Even on the first day, sitting in the classroom, I felt like a fish out of water. Because it seemed like everybody knew I was a felon, or everybody was like, oh, we know her, but really it was just my mind.
Yeah.
You know, so I went out and I called my spiritual mother. She said, go right back in there. It's your time. And I'm telling you, as I'm sitting here right now, when I sat down, I had a vision of me graduating. And I believe that that was connected to the plan that God had for me. Needless to say, I graduated after a long time, going back and forth. And then I became a drug and alcohol counselor in a rehab that I came out of. That was phenomenal, that I was able to go back in and help people in the same place that I came out of. I was able to go facilitate into the same prison system. It was like a miracle. I'm literally a miracle. I was able to, it was so emotional, being able to walk in the doors of the prison as a facilitator, as a helper, as teaching people what could happen if you just put the work in. It was very emotional. I stayed there for since 2012. Because of the COVID, we kind of shut down. There are so many phenomenal things that are happening. And sometimes it's just about being at the right place at the right time. It's about your relationship, your higher power with God. It's about being relentless, regardless of what happens in your life. We still got to keep it moving. It's about doing things when you don't even feel like doing them. That some of my greatest breakthroughs came with doing stuff that I did not feel like doing.
Right. Well, congratulations. And that is such a success story. I did see that another topic that the three of you will cover will be recovery. And listening to all of your stories, that may be a different meaning for you. So, Toby, can you share with me what your recovery may mean? And then Chappelle, share with me what your recovery may mean, and we'll wrap it up with Rashida.
Yeah, sure. So for me, recovery has been being able to be in these kinds of authentic spaces, reclaiming some things for myself, including reconnecting with my own spiritual life, things that I assumed that I was already good with. That I really was I realized how disconnected I was when on those darkest days when I was really struggling. And so for me, this whole process has been about reclaiming myself uh, and having my own agency and my voice. And so and being able to uh, sit in community with folks and share that and be real and authentic and have this reciprocal relationship, not where it's like I'm giving, but that I'm receiving. I receive so much out of doing this, doing the work. I always have, actually, not just recently, but I always have received so much from doing this kind of work.
Okay. Chappelle?
And for me, recovery equates to healing. And it's a day-to-day process. Like I'll be 30, which is a huge milestone. And like I just want to be liberated. And so I've spent the past, I would say, like 2 years actively healing. And that means therapy, right? Letting go of that anger, traveling, doing things with my daughter, just being liberated in all that I do. Like if something disturbs me, I'm not with it. You know, I have so many boundaries and I'm not, I don't disrespect anyone, but I don't allow different things around my daughter and I, and I'm very, very, very mindful of that now. Like I'm very intentional about my peace, man. Like I don't play about my peace, please. I don't care who you are. And I think that, just owning that, like, listen, this is my life. You only get one. I do good. I'm going to continue to spread love, but I'm not going to allow anything else enter into me or her, or into our world or our life. So just protecting us and just healing, that's been recovery for me, getting my mind right, taking accountability for things that I need to improve just becoming a better being on earth. Really has been recovery for me. I've done so many things, from anger management class just because to, all sorts of things. So recovery for me is just healing my mind, body, and soul, and being connected with my faith.
Okay, Rashida?
I'm going to say recovery to me is regaining that which I have given away. Everything that I've given away for doubt, fear, unbelief, foolishness, I'm coming for it. I'm recovering everything that was taken away from me, everything they said I couldn't have, everything they said I couldn't be. I'm coming for it. That's what recovery means for me.
Okay. So before we wrap up, ladies, please tell me how you all met and how you came to do the podcast.
One man is Ruben, a Black king, Ruben Jones. We all know him individually. We all have our own personal relationships with him, which relate back to serving the community. I met Ruben before motherhood, when I was an undergraduate in college. I always had the desire to uplift the youth in an authentic way, as you probably all can tell. And that's how we met. And that's how I had the pleasure of meeting these ladies.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So how can people stay in contact with you, and how can they watch your podcast?
So our social media platforms, we have Instagram, and then we also have Facebook. We are A Changed Mind Pod. So A Changed Mind POD on Instagram and Facebook. And then our podcast is released on Apple Podcasts as well as Google Play and Spotify.
Okay. All right. So any final thoughts?
Episode 2 is coming up, okay? Those are my episode 2's coming up. Thank you for having us.
No problem.
And love
Toby
yourself.
and Rashida.
Yes, I just want to say, and never doubt, fear is the enemy, and we have the victory.
That's right.
Mhm. Thank you for having us. And again, I can't say enough about how much having these honest conversations, these authentic conversations with these ladies have done for me. And so I feel like it's soul work. So I'm happy to be a part of this.
That's awesome. And it is needed, especially when we have those down days and you have genuine people to speak with and say, listen, you know what? It's not working today. I need your help. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I appreciate Toby. I know Toby and I know her husband. So there's some of those days where I'm like, Toby, okay, it's not working. But it means so much to have a powerful sister in your corner, brothers as well. But right now I'm speaking to my sisters. It means so much to have a powerful sister to speak those words of encouragement to get through the next minute, the next hour, and the next day. So, ladies, I thank you so much for all of the wonderful work that you are doing. And Doctor, don't forget about me. Don't forget about the young people when you make it big and you're writing all of that stuff.
God will keep me humble.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It is so refreshing to know we have young ladies such as Chappelle, Toby, and Rashida that are willing to help others to have real conversations about their traumas. These ladies have endured pain, suffering, love, laughter, and healing through fellowship with each other. Remember, you are not alone in your journey. Peace and blessings.